Hi, I am Ray Dickey from South Carolina, Hudson Valley CAI Association Help Now. We cover many states. Thank you so much for being here today. 25 policies and procedures. I can pretty much guarantee that we're going to give you one that you never thought about. Okay, and let me know if I was wrong on that guarantee. If you need CEUs, everyone has a question feature. Please use it. Just write CEU. And that way I'll know that you need them. So find that question feature. That's how you communicate with us today. Please send comments, send questions. I love it. A lot of times it changes the program. Don't send me anything too top secret though, because I don't use people's names, but someday I could make a mistake. So if you want to send more than CEUs, go ahead to. You want to tell me how your day is? I'd like to hear about it. So, but make sure you include CEUs. So with that being said, I would like to have our panel introduce themselves with who I see first, and that is Stephanie.
Good morning, I'm Stephanie Harmon. I currently am a GM at a property in New Jersey, large scale, over 1,000 homes. Excited to be here this morning, and that's me.
Stephanie is the best manager in the entire world.
Thanks.
Because my mother-in-law lives in the community and she tells me all the time. That's what she says. Stephanie is the best manager in the entire world.
She's a great homeowner, so we'll just leave it like that. It's a two-way street, right? So
it is. My mother-in-law is very nice.
Yes, okay. She
is. Greg.
Good morning, everyone. Greg Girelli with Girelli Insurance Agency. We're located in Cold Spring, New York, and we have community association master policy insurance programs for community associations throughout the Hudson Valley and surrounding tri-state area.
Now, before John introduces himself, we learned today that John was in Miami during the Miami Vice years, and he was basically hobnogging with Miami Vice actors. John, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess sort of. John Legumina from the Legumina Law Firm in Purchase, New York. We represent condos, HOAs, and co-ops from New York City throughout the Hudson Valley areas.
John is a fascinating individual, isn't he, Greg? We always learn something new about him.
Yeah, you never know.
Corey.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Corey Kravitz. I'm the managing principal of Kovach, Schiffer and Nesbitt's Florida office. We're located in Boca Raton, Florida, service the whole state, and represent community associations for all their legal needs.
All right. Mike is here with us today.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for having me. My name is Mike Lezzi with the Acrisure Community Association Division. I myself personally am a CERMS, which is a community insurance risk management specialist. We have offices throughout the East Coast. I am stationed in northern New Jersey and operate in the tri-state area, and our division primarily specializes in community associations of all kinds.
Besides being a great insurance professional, Mike is like 9 feet tall. He doesn't mind me communicating that. And his wife is like 8 feet tall. And they have a 3-year-old that's looking like the kid's going to be like 10 feet tall, probably based on those genes. Right, Mike?
It'll be pretty close. He'll definitely be taller than me, I think, for sure. But he's like just turned 3. He's the size of like a 7 or 8 year old. So
he is cute. All right. Dave.
Good morning. I think if we have walk-up music, we know what John's song is going to be. It's going to be Phil Collins, In the Air Tonight. That'll be his walk-up song. But good morning. My name is Dave Byrne. I'm the partner in charge of my law firm's Community Association Practice Group, Ansel, Grimm, and Aaron. And we represent condominiums, co-ops, and HOAs in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and New York.
I hope I have time to add it. I have to figure out like the copyright thing with that, though.
You only have a few seconds per song, right? Before they can clip you on YouTube. They fine you on YouTube or issue you a strike or something.
It's automated. I've had like copyright strikes, not maliciously, but okay. A question did come in before we go to the topic, and I want to get to it because I appreciate it so much. People sending me questions. I have a community with a lot of homeowners who have past due assessments, but we do not have the funds to have our documents amended for us to be able to send them over to collections for the past due assessments. What can we do? Dave Byrne, I'll start with you.
They don't have a provision in the governing documents for it?
That's what it says. It says, but we do not have the funds to have the docs amended for us to be able to send them over to collections for past due. That is the question.
I mean, I don't know that there is an answer. I mean, if the owners have to pay, then I think by law they don't need a provision to collect the money. There's already a contract requiring the owners to pay, so therefore they could bring an action to make them pay. I think, if I'm understanding it correctly.
Oh, sounds like you did. Corey.
Yeah, I think your documents probably already have the authority to send it over to your attorney for collections. I know our firm, we advance the costs and we defer our fees until we collect it from the owners. So that way associations can afford to send it over without worrying about attorney's fees.
All right. Miami Vice John, what is your advice?
Yeah, I too, it's definitely a breach of contract, right? So you have some covenant somewhere saying you got to pay at least monthly assessments. If your documents are entirely just vague and have like a one sentence statement, that's still enough for a breach of contract lawsuit.
Okay. So even though the documents are silent, doesn't really matter, theoretically. I think that's what I heard.
Well, you have to have at least a obligation to pay assessments. It has to be a minimum.
Yeah, I agree. And you also the problem you may have, and this maybe goes to Corey's point too, to think about, if you don't have a provision that allows for fee shifting, allows you to recover your attorney fees, like in New Jersey, for instance, the HOA, the condo, can only get its attorney fees recovered if the governing documents say so. So where Corey is in Florida, maybe it's a statutory thing, but in like New Jersey, for instance, if the governing documents don't have that provision, then you wouldn't be able to recover attorney fees. So whether your lawyer did it on a deferred basis, like Corey suggested, or whether an attorney did it as a fee for service basis, you wouldn't have any. There may not be any attorney fees coming back your way, at least in New Jersey, for instance.
All right, excellent. All right, I am going to get to the topic. Thanks for that question. I appreciate that. Policies and procedures. Why do we have to have them, John?
Best practice. I mean, Greg could tell you, like, if you don't have uniform and consistent policies, you're exposing yourself to liability for not treating owners the same. That's called disparate treatment, and that's like a breach of duty claim. So it's part of best practices and protecting yourself from lawsuits.
Okay, Greg, before we go to the 25 different policies, commentary.
You want your policies to be consistent. That's why you want to have them. You want to follow them for everybody, even the board members and the president of the board and all the unit owners. If you're following your policies and they're communicated well, that should keep you away from having claims against the association and having to talk to your insurance agent.
Okay, Mike, you love policies, right? Most insurance professionals do.
Yeah, you can never have enough. I was surprised we didn't have more than 25 listed there. But to Greg's point, I think one of the best things you could do is clearly and effectively communicate the procedures and policies that you have in place. You know, best practices, as John said, but you want to make sure that you control the chaos, so to speak. You know, you want to have proper order from a social aspect, from an event aspect, and just the day-to-day life of the association.
You know, Stephanie, before I go any further, if you don't know or you don't want to answer, it's fine. That's always, like, people get nervous when I say it that way. But how many policies do you think you have at your association? Can you take a guess? I'm just sure you have a very large association. You have a tremendous amount of amenities. About how many policies do you think you have?
You know, policies and rules and regulations are similar when you're looking at a community of this size, because you have policies for the board and how they should govern and function, and then you have the rules and regs. So policies for the board, we probably have 15 working policies that we have just in place for the Board of Trustees once elected. And then our rules and regulations is an entire book. So it's not something that you can, you know, when you relate to the pool, every amenity needs to have its own guidelines and structures so that we can control the chaos, as was earlier mentioned. So it's difficult to even maintain them all and memorize them all. And then as your community evolves, homeowners want to change those policies to what is happening today, i.e. social media is something
Right.
that's the big policy right now.
Corey, I have what and where. I have no idea I have that. Can you relate to that or offer some commentary why I have what and where before we dive in to the different policies?
I was just going to say that, policies are designed to, your board members are volunteers. It's keep it simple, stupid. If you're doing a collection, all right, what's the first step, next step? And you don't have to guess or make any mistakes. When airline pilots are flying airplanes, they have checklists that they go through for each function. Associations should do the same to keep it efficient, fair, and streamlined.
Okay, and we're almost ready to dive in. But before we do so, Dave, what are the different parts of a policy? Does it even exist? Do we need to have parts?
Need to have courts?
Parts.
Oh, parts.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, because some policies would be different based on the circumstances, when they're triggered, what level of board action, whether a standard policy is one or multiple policies where management's given discretion to do certain things, and that's that policy would exist, and then within that policy there'd be parts. Management has the discretion to waive a fine, for instance, but only if it's the first time the guy's had a violation, or management has the right to waive a late fee, but only if it's the first time. But management doesn't have the right to waive a late fee if it's the second time, that kind of thing.
Okay. And audience, by the way, if you want to use your question feature, let me know how many policies you have or how you feel about policies. I'm also going to ask you, do you think you have too many policies? Do associations sometimes go policy crazy? But let's start off with the first one. Stephanie's nodding her head. Okay. All right, let's start off with the first one. It's going to be fun. I wonder how many of these policies Stephanie will have, because her community has just about everything. The first one I have is that you should have a security policy. So I am going to start with Corey. Corey, do you agree with this?
Sometimes yes and sometimes no. Some governing documents, especially for HOAs, specifically state that they do not provide security. And so by having a security policy, you could be creating a new duty, a duty of care that the association didn't originally have. So I would talk to your lawyer about that before creating a security policy.
So interesting. You lawyers, you guys do come up with different angles and ways to look at things. Dave, how do you feel about security policies? Do you agree with Corey or?
And when you say security policies, you mean like keeping owners like safe and protected from? Is that what you're talking about?
Stephanie, I don't know if you've been on one of these with Dave for a while. It's a lot of questions I get. All I do is make these silly slides just to keep the conversation moving.
I can't really see the slide. The problem I can't see the slide.
He can say anything he wants.
I can't see the slide.
Yet he's like in court.
What's the slide?
Here's an example, Dave. A security.
I see an exclamation point. That's what I see.
A security. I don't know what's going on with you. I can't help you with your computer. I don't know what's going on there. A security policy would be a community that has a gatehouse or a community that has active security people. Do they need a security policy?
Well, of course. I would think that the contract, in a lot of ways, the contracts you sign with certain vendors would be the policy. So I gather you create like a specification for a security company, or a specification for or even I guess like a terms of employment for someone who's watching the front gate. Those are policies that are put in place. The companies have to know what to do. They have to know when they can do it, what level of service they have to provide. So I would think, I don't know how you could operate those types of things without a policy, but I think in a lot of ways, even like in the context of management, and like I think there's a lot of ways the contracts you sign with the specifications and the scopes of work, I think in a lot of ways they're the policies.
Dave's got the audience all worked up now, which I don't blame him. They're like, Dave's right. Do you mean documents? Do you need property? I don't see any slides either.
Thank
The
you,
slides are
audience.
behind me. The slides are behind me. They're not separate. I think security should definitely have a policy. Security, when present, should work in tandem with management for violation coordination. Let me read that one again. That's interesting. Security, when present, should work in tandem with management for violation coordination.
That would be for mobile guards. So if your community has mobile guards and they see like a parking violation or something, management can't get out to do that kind of stuff overnight, right? So the communities that are fortunate enough and can afford mobile security, for instance, to be driving around the property, they should be working with management by jotting down that license plate number, calling in or letting management know this car was parked overnight, and things of that nature. That's what I would assume that means. But, you know, if I could just jump in on a security policy, right? So you do have your contracts, and that's their contractual obligation to the community. We've established a specific way to answer the phone, you know, how to do things in that booth. To me, those are the types of like a must-have policy. I don't want my guard just picking up the phone and going, yo, you reached security. You have to answer the phone a very specific way. Regency at Monroe, security, how may I help you this afternoon or this morning? So that's a policy that we've put in place. And of course, I've called them randomly throughout the day to make sure that they're doing that, right? Also, something as silly as if you have a guard that smokes. Well, they're not allowed to smoke anywhere, you know, in that guardhouse area. They have to be sure. So I think those are the types of policies that are important to association and members of the association, because it's a look, it's a presence. Security is the first people that your members and your guests see when they're coming through the gate. So that's what I would gear more toward the policy from in relation to security.
I love it, because I was thinking of when they said violations, like somebody's bushes are too high or the doors are the wrong color. But really, Stephanie, you're saying have a policy in place so security knows what violations you want them to communicate and which ones you don't, along with all the other great stuff you just mentioned. I think you just sold the importance of a security policy.
Okay. All right.
Wow. I was going to go to John, but I don't even need to at this point. So, John, any additional commentary? We can't hear you.
Muted.
I agree. That was a really good point Stephanie made. So
Thank you.
nothing else.
I guess my mother-in-law is right. Stephanie is the best manager ever. We'll see. All right. Other policy. Maybe we'll get a debate about this one among the panel. Does there need to be a policy on ethics and a conflict of interest? John.
Well, I mean, in New York, there actually is a requirement for that you disclose conflicts of interest. So it's already there statutorily. Best practices, yeah. CIA has a code of conduct that I definitely recommend to all my clients. You can't make it mandatory, but it's certainly a good idea and a good policy. And since we're talking about policies, I highly recommend it. It deals with ethics, but it also deals with streamlining communications, and really, you know, dealing with things that might be considered confidential, not taking action outside of meetings and that type of thing.
Thank you, John. Now, looks like Dave is excited to get to. All right, let me go to Dave really quick.
No, you're good. You can go on. I'm just
All right.
I'm just
Corey,
adjusting.
let me play devil's advocate, okay? Why should you have to have a policy about ethics or even a conflict of interest when that should be common sense? It should be well known. Why do you have to put that in writing? Or maybe you think that you don't. In New York, you must, according to John, I believe.
Well, in Florida, it's statutory also, just like in New York, that like John mentioned. So I don't know that you necessarily need a policy because it's already public policy to have a policy. So your policy is the statutory policy. So I don't think you have to do it twice. The conflict of interest statute's pretty clear, and so I don't think you would need to create a new policy to say the same thing.
Dave.
Yeah, I think I think a lot of associations make the mistake of over policying things that are already existing in the law. Uh, like Corey and John, like these are it's the same with like in New Jersey, where New Jersey has a mandate to make ADR available. Stephanie's probably heard of that a gazillion times. And there's this like fantasy that there has to be some written policy about ADR. The statute itself is the policy. The statute says in this example, in the event of a housing related dispute, you have to make an alternative to litigation available, has to be fair and efficient, and has to involve someone other than a board member or a manager. That's the policy. I mean, there's no other way to manipulate that any different. And adding stuff to things that are already set by the law in a lot of ways makes things more confusing and sets up landmines that you somehow are taking on obligations more than what the legislature or the government has. Like Corey used the great expression, public policy. There's already public policy in my hypothetical with ADR. Public policy already is there. That's the law. There's anything else you add to it or try to manipulate around it ends up being can end up being a problem.
Okay, don't get me over to ADR because I know that I have that as coming up. Greg, I think we've done live streams though on whether or not boards can enforce new board members to sign conflict of interest and ethic policies and things like that. Do you agree that you also remember us having conversations about that?
Yes, and I forget the answer on whether you're forcing them to sign this or not. But yes, they are more common sense policies, and if they're already in law, I agree with the lawyers. There's no reason to duplicate something. It leaves room for an error.
Yeah. Stephanie, I we don't have to put you on the spot for your community though, but this one seems all over. I know we've done whole segments on whether or not you could make a fellow board member even sign this kind of policy. Yet here we are also having an opinion that maybe you don't really need one. And then John's talking about in New York that it's possibly statutory, if I heard him correctly. John, interrupt me if I'm wrong. Stephanie, how do you feel about policies and what's your experience been with them for ethics, conflicts, and interest?
Obviously, I'm going to agree with the attorneys. Otherwise, I'd be a bad manager. So I'm going to agree with the attorneys. I can tell you what we do. We don't require an additional signature on anything, but we do supply them the gap report from CAI on conflicts of interest as part of their onboarding any new board members so that they understand exactly what we're referencing. And that's really about all that we do.
Okay, so I want to jump off this one, but really quick for attorneys. John, you're saying that you have to have one in New York, correct? So you're for it. Corey, you're not for it, correct?
In Florida, there's a statute that says that the board member has to sign a certification that they've read and understand the governing documents and the laws. So beyond that, I don't think it's necessary.
Okay. And Dave, you agree? So
yeah,
here we are. We're a little bit different opinions on that, and I know a lot of boards are going to feel differently about that. All right, Mike, have you ever seen that before I go to the next one?
Yes, I have seen it actually far too often. I agree with everything that anybody's saying, with everybody that is saying, that you don't need to duplicate it. But I would just stress maybe having just like a point of mentioning it, at least once a year, especially if it's a newer board member, just as a refresher, within like maybe an executive meeting, because sometimes people lose sight or lose track of what they should and shouldn't be doing. So I think that, that really wouldn't hurt by just refreshing them.
Okay. And I have to watch our time because there's 25 of them, and I think we've done 2, which always ends up to happen. The next one is fighting neighbors. Really, really quick. Do we need a separate policy for this, Dave?
Frankly, I think the fighting neighbors thing, there shouldn't be the policy should be, there is no policy. Fighting neighbors are fighting neighbors. They can do what they need to do. They can call the police. They can sue each other. I think associations should be very wary of getting involved in owner versus owner disputes.
Does anyone
policy
on the panel
or otherwise?
Sticking with policies, does anybody on the panel think that there needs to be a policy in regard how to handle neighbor disputes? Okay, no. Interesting. Okay, the next one, oh boy, this is the big one, and we could spend like an hour on this one. Stephanie, I'm actually going to start with you first, and I don't want to put you on the spot. I really do, but I won't. Social media policy. Oh boy, what do you think about this one? What do you want to share?
I really like this one actually, and our social media policy is probably I think like 10 or 12 points, so that the homeowners understand what they can and cannot post, i.e. Political or using foul language back at another homeowner, so that when I go and take something down from the community Facebook page or social media page, there's an understanding and there's something for the manager or the staff to be able to point to and say, I'm sorry, you violated this policy that is part of what you said yes to when you asked for membership to join this group. So I actually like it because social media is constantly changing, and we really need to do. Now, we also have a policy for the board that if you're a board member, you're not to engage in conflicts and speak on behalf of the board or the association on a topic that may be running wild on the social media page. They're just supposed to step off and let the community have their conversation. So that's how we've created that here, because we want to keep the board. We don't want the board going on and say, well, the board member said this, when they're really expressing a personal belief and not that of the board as a whole. So we're very strict with that in our board members as it relates to posting a response to anything. That's management's job. Let us do it. We're monitoring the page. So we do actually have that policy in place for our board as well as the community.
Right. And I want to be careful, Stephanie, because I got to watch our time. But
Yeah.
this is just in regard to your site that the association manages, correct? Not Facebook or anything else like that.
Right. Just my property. This is what we've created here, and it works for us.
All right. So this is where we're going to run out of time here. So I will start with Corey. Corey, social media policy, if you could do it quick, policy, if you should have one in regard to any social media engines that the association controls first, should they even bother trying to have one for outside the community?
Social media is not in Florida, at least, is not required by statutes, not required by the governing documents. My personal belief is that associations should not engage in social media other than, putting information out. I would disable comments. It just becomes unneighborly and very difficult to control. That's my personal opinion. But from a legal standpoint, if you're going to have social media and you're going to remove comments from people, I guess there should be some policies in place as long as they're fair and don't violate any kind of, potential fair housing issues or anything like that, discriminatory language.
All right, so let me just make a blanket statement so we can fly through this. We're already going to assume that every lawyer doesn't want you to write down a lot of stuff and throw it on social media. You guys don't like people to write anything for the most part and put anything in writing unless it's been reviewed. So we can make a blanket statement as far as I don't think there's going to be any lawyer that's going to let board members on social media. John, with that blanket statement, how about an official site? Should there be a policy? And how about a policy for people, what they can and can't say off the association site, including board members?
So if you were going to host your own site, you could have like terms and, not disparaging the board unless needlessly. My sense though is I kind of agree with Corey, like stay clear of it altogether. More harm comes out of it than good. And if you want to use your own platform, you better have good terms of use and have someone monitoring it. And disabling the commentary is a great idea because that almost always leads to needless problems. You already have enough to do that you need to now monitor what people say at 3 a.m. after they've had a couple drinks. Yeah.
Greg, I already made a blanket statement that lawyers already hate anybody writing down anything. All right. Dave, blanket statement. We already know that you hate anybody writing down anything for the most part. How do you feel about a social media policy if they're not going to listen to you and they're going to insist on being on social media? Do you need one?
Well, you're talking about the board. I mean, to me, a policy is something that is there to regulate the operations of the association, management, board members. Rules are there to regulate the conduct of the owners and how you're going to punish them and that sort of thing. So when it comes to a policy vis-a-vis social media, yeah, I think the board should certainly adopt a policy with respect to the use of social media. But the generalized policy ought to be either no one does anything unless it's approved by a majority of the board, or no one does anything unless it's in accordance with the policy set by the majority of the board. So for instance, the board could vote, okay, our policy is by majority vote, where I hereby make a motion to set our policy that Bob and Jane can post on our social media account, but no one else can. That to me is a policy.
Okay. Mike, I think I'm hearing from the panel that most of them do believe there should be some kind of social media policy, but limited to maybe the board members, because otherwise what are you going to do about it anyway?
Yeah, I think everybody is hit the nail on the head there. I really like what Stephanie said as far as their viewpoint on it and the things that they, recommend restriction. I think that you have to have some sort of, control and the ability to prevent people from putting out important information of the association, which in my eyes would be the most important, and also, a little bit less conflict out there.
Greg, any commentary?
Everything said was excellent. Be clear, consistent. I think it would be better to have a policy so everybody knows what to expect. The big difference on these is if it's the official association site versus there's a lot of non-official sites set up where all that bickering and back and forth goes off, and that's where things tend to lose control. The official site, turning off commenting, just posting hours of the pool and these items, usually a little easier to monitor.
Why make a policy that you could not control in regard to the non-association sites? Does everyone agree with me? Don't bother, because you can't control it anyway.
Yes.
You're just
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
I got some questions. One's about noise. I'm going to push that for another time. If you want to email me, I will be happy to get you answers to these questions. Neighbor disputes. I think some neighbor disputes can inform policy. After all, violations also result from neighbor complaints, unsightly conditions, nuisances. And then someone is asking about unofficial pages. How can you stop them or what can be done? We've spent entire hours on that. So if you email me about it, I'm happy to kind of refer you to those videos we've done on that. There are some things you can do, but maybe not. It's going to be hard. Let me see if I can fly through these. Does everyone agree you need to have a policy on how you're going to find people and how you're going to register violations and communicate them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's probably an extremely important policy, and don't deviate it from it because it could be big trouble. Does anyone disagree? Okay. Here's a big one. Background checks. I'm going to try to fly through it because there's going to be a debate whether or not you should even do them. Stephanie, does there need to be a policy in regard to background checks for prospective employees? And maybe this isn't even an association issue. Maybe it's an employment issue.
Well, I would imagine if you are a self-managed property, the answer would be yes. If you work for a company, as I do, FirstService runs background checks before anybody is hired.
Okay. John.
I mean, it doesn't come into play with most of the New York properties I run across, but in New York you have to be careful because they have this Fair Chance Housing Act, but I don't. If you're just a condo with the right of first refusal, you shouldn't be doing background checks. If someone's renting, I find that happens frequently. The condominiums are like they're treating themselves as if they were co-ops, and they're doing background checks and things that you really, if it was challenged in court, you'd lose.
Yeah, don't get me too sidetracked here. Corey, background check. Do you need a policy on it?
I like to put in my contracts when I do contract reviews for vendors or construction contracts, that the contractor agrees to do background checks on the people who are coming to the community to do work, especially in situations like a condo where the workers will have access to the condominium to do repairs on the balconies or stuff like that. I like to put that into my contracts. But in terms of background checks on prospective tenants or members of the community, that really needs to be in your governing documents before you do it.
Dave.
I wouldn't want to be part of any background checks for tenants, owners, shareholders. Like John said, that's a straight line path to a housing discrimination complaint, even if you're innocent of the charges. If you're dealing with self-employed, self-managed associations, or associations that have employees, because many associations have management companies, but then also have employees. I think you're going to naturally have an employment policy in place, right? Not like employment contracts, but I think employment policies, like some things as rudimentary as when you take a day off and, overtime and that sort of thing. So I would think that background checks would be part of that policy. And then I guess you alert an applicant to the fact that there will be a background check. That would, I guess, be the policy.
All right. And by the way, I had to excuse Mike because his internet was bad. So he didn't leave. He can't hear me though, because I did make him go away. So poor Mike. Let's do the next one. Somebody's actually asking from the audience, so I'll jump ahead. Documents. Yeah, I meant, Stephanie, you definitely need to have a policy in regard to what documents members are entitled to request and how that process should take place. Am I correct?
Yes, but I'm going to actually defer to legal for this.
Yes, I do a big what I do, Stephanie, is I do a big disclaimer that no one should ever listen to me anyway. And that's my blanket disclaimer for all these lies. So I feel comfortable just saying anything.
Right.
With that being said, Dave.
But I missed the question. What was it?
You need to have a policy on documents, right? Because I want to start flying through these. I mean, you have to have it. Whether people can get them, what you have to give them.
I suppose, but frankly, in most states, that's regulated by statute. So a lot of times, the policies I see clients create they're not even consistent with the statute. So I'm not sure you do need a policy. Certainly not one that conflicts with the statute. It's probably, if you're serious about it, it's probably something you have to have a lawyer do, frankly.
See, Stephanie, why I can say anything? They'll correct me. That's what they're here for. Corey.
Dave nailed it on the head as usual. It's statutory in Florida. Florida does give some areas where you can adjust the policy for inspections, but it's pretty tight as it is.
Oh, okay. So I'm hearing you don't really need one. John.
All right. So yeah, this is a doors box in New York. So in New York, most bylaws say books and records, and they don't really define what they are. And it used to be that you have the right to go into like the managing agent's office no more than once a month to look at everything. But the case law in New York has changed quite dramatically. Whereas if you have it in electronic form, which almost every case is true, courts have held that you can and should send it to the requester electronically. So you don't need to have these inspection setups. Now, there's some debate of whether, what about confidentiality concerns, but courts have even said you could take care of that with a standard confidentiality agreement. So, really the answer to your question is the policy in New York should be owners are entitled to just about anything. So
right.
Let them have it.
The question is, though, because I don't want to dive deep into every one of these topics, should an association in New York have a written policy in regard to if members ask for documents? Do they need it or do they not need it, John?
Yeah. The policy should be, if it's related to how common charges are spent, they're entitled to it, with the caveat for anything that involves privacy rights.
All right, Stephanie, committees, do you have to have a policy in regard to what committees should or should not be doing? I'm going to be devil's advocate, and don't you already have a charter for that?
I think that you need to at least have a mission statement for those committees and determine what they're going to be working inside of, so they just don't go rogue and do whatever they want to do. We used to have here, we just actually got down to only 4 committees for this entire property. And then we just do ad hoc committees as we go, and we give them a specific task. So the policy should state something. Yes, do you need a policy? Yes. Does it need to be overboard? No. This is your task. This is what we're asking you to do from the board perspective. And, once you deliver it, thank you very much. Stay within that. That's what I think the policy should be as far as structuring the committee.
All right. Anybody on the panel think that you should not have a policy in regard to committees? Okay, so you need to have one, audience, as per our panel. Greg, any commentary? I like just to make sure you're I know we don't always have a lot of insurance questions, but.
No, nothing insurance related on that one. It's just a good practice.
Okay. Board meetings. I don't know why I have this. I think this is kind of related to ethics. So if it's okay with the panel, I'm going to skip it. I don't think you have to have a policy on how a board meeting should run or the different aspects of it. Anybody disagree with that? Stephanie, do you find a lot of the residents love policies or they hate policies? The owners. I'm curious.
I don't think that a lot of the owners even pay attention to them, if I'm being honest. They just go about their, they go about their day, they do what they need to do, and then they realize there's a policy when they may receive a violation. And that's really how over my 25-year career, that's really what I have seen throughout all the properties I've ever sat on.
If the Girellis lived in your community, they would care a lot. They would be asking about a lot of policies because Greg loves policies. He loves them. All right. Pets and service animals, no brainer. Does everyone agree this is a no brainer? Wait a minute. Dave's making a face. I can't tell what the face is. In agreement or not? Dave, pets and service animal policies.
I think having a written standard policy here is a mistake unless it's done a certain way. As I kind of said before, when I was relating to New Jersey and ADR, which is a very obviously specific issue, here the policy is the law, right? Like it's very difficult to. I'd be hard pressed to recommend to a client that to try to adopt a policy concerning service animals, emotional support animals, because it's all case by case. It's all, like what information you're going to get, when you're going to get it, who's in front of you, who isn't. It's very case by case, very fact specific. And if you really want some kind of policy, I've created forms that managers and boards can use when people raise the question, a form to hand out to someone. It's also very specific state by state. I mean, we had a big decision by our state Supreme Court last year, 2025. Yeah, I guess 2025, maybe 2024 at this point, which was like a 90-page opinion that laid out how you have to specifically handle any of these types of requests. So any policy you have doesn't follow that opinion is basically worthless in New Jersey. So it really is a case by case, fact specific, state by state a process that I don't know how far you get with a policy. Last thing, I guess, in that is, frankly, in my view, if someone asks for an accommodation, I hate to make work for lawyers, but if someone asks for an accommodation, you really probably ought to ask your lawyer about it. And in which case, the policy is sort of irrelevant, other than our policy is we ask our lawyer.
All right. Stephanie, there's so many rules involving pets and service animals, and it seems like confusing a little bit between what's a policy and what's a rule, right? So how do you feel about this? Do you guys have a set policy on pets and service animals and have rules on top of that? I mean, how are you handling this?
The only thing that is if someone wants to bring a pet or service animal into the outdoor pool area or into the clubhouse, we just, the only requirement we have is that they're visibly wearing the vest that makes that statement.
So you brought up a whole other thing, which I have to avoid. Service animals are going to be, okay. So here's an example really quick, Corey. My building, we have a rule that you can't take your pet out the front door. You have to take them out the side entrance. There's a reason for it. I don't want to waste time on the reason for it. There's a legit reason. Is that a policy or a rule? I don't know what my association has, but I'm curious. Is it a policy or a rule?
Probably a rule.
Right, so you don't need a policy.
Policy is more how the board deals with things. The rules are what the membership follows.
Okay.
So you know, and Dave killed it again on service and emotional support animals. The policy should be consult with the attorney. I saw a policy of a condo last week, condo I do not represent, and it was discriminatory on its face as it relates to emotional support dogs, and it wasn't intentional, but they just, you know, there's federal Fair Housing Act, and there's also the state, you know, states regulate also, and sometimes the state, you know, they'll pass something and it conflicts with the federal law. It just hasn't gone through the appellate section yet, and you can be following the state law and breaking federal law and not even knowing it.
Policy necessary. That's what I'm hearing.
Policy is called the
Okay.
attorney.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to John in a second. Mike, this would be something an insurance company would definitely want to see in writing in some way, whether there's a rule or a policy. True or false?
They don't ask the questions all the time. I think that, as to Dave's point, it's going to be case by case, specifically if it involves a claim, right? You know, what are the details of the claim, the nature, you know, where the rules followed or broken that the association has in place. So they would dive into the specifics, you know, in that situation.
Yeah, like Ray, a policy, like what Corey was saying, a policy would be for a manager, would be if anybody asks for an accommodation relating to disability, don't say no, don't say yes, tell the board, and then then contact counsel. That to me would be the policy.
Oh, you know what?
Don't say yes, don't say no. Non-committal. Thank you for your paperwork. We'll be in touch. That's
You
what I would
explained
do.
that
That's the
beautifully.
policy.
That's awesome. Greg, any commentary?
Yes, if you have, I like what the attorneys are saying here. These policies, some of these can be very dangerous, so you really need to make sure they're written in accordance with the law if you do have them. And it can be better just to make sure you're following the law and consulting your attorney, because a lot of these pet situations churn into lawsuits, claims, and threats.
Holiday decorations. John, I know I skipped. You can backtrack if you want, but this is a rule or is it a policy?
Rule. I'm going to backtrack.
Okay.
Even you gave me the chance. In New York, Corey's right. In New York, like New York State statutes go further than the federal statutes for fair housing. So you got to be careful with that. As far as forms, and this has come out of like rulings or verdicts in housing discrimination complaints, that you should have a reasonable accommodation request form. So that's a good form to have, and you could have it as a policy that everyone needs to fill out this form. Like Dave said, you know, at that point you're just asking, but they should fill out a form. And also, when it comes to emotional support animals, dogs, that's usually what most of these issues come down to. You should have a uniform policy that if you do end up allowing them, they still have to provide proof of having shots, registration with the town, that they'll obey the local leash law, and you know, like have an affidavit form ahead of time that they can effectively handle and control their dogs. Those are all good forms to have in place.
Okay, excellent. Stephanie, now I'm going to do something called a lightning round. This is basically when I'm running out of time and I just need to fly through these, okay? So panel, if you could do it for me, you could say yes, no, or maybe, or pass, and then I'll figure it out later. And I'm going to put you in this too, Stephanie. I'd be curious if you have a policy. And I think we all know what the difference is between a policy and a rule. Obviously, all these things, you have to have some rules. I guess the question is, do you need to have a policy? Stephanie, do you feel like we've communicated, and maybe we haven't, well enough on the difference between a policy and a rule? Because I want to make sure we did a good job on that. I really do.
Somewhat.
Okay, somewhat. I'm not happy with that, Ben. Okay, all right, I'll let one of the lawyers tackle it. Dave, could you please keep it short? And once again, tell us what the difference is between a policy and a rule.
I think a rule is something that creates a yes and no, a do and don't for an owner or a resident, and a policy is something that is a do and don't on top of the board and manager as to how they're going to deal with the owners and other operational issues.
I love it. I was thinking a rule is something that the board is telling owners they have to follow, and a policy is something that the board needs to follow or use as a guideline. Dave, is that acceptable?
Yeah, I think most people in our industry would hear the word policy. I mean, Stephanie would probably be a better person to comment on this, but I think in our industry, if people hear the word policy, they're thinking about the operations of the board and manager, and when they hear the word rule, they're thinking about things owners can and can't do.
Stephanie, I think we have it, right? Do you agree? I think. Okay,
Yeah, we have it now.
Here we go. So I'm going to go to the panel lightning round. Holiday decorations. Do you have a policy on that, Stephanie, or just rules?
We have rules.
Okay. Do you have a form? I'm curious.
A form?
Yeah, a form to fill out about it if you want to put them up.
No, you just put them up.
Just roll. Okay. Greg, have you ever seen this? Yes or no? Or maybe?
Not in policy, just a rule.
Does anyone on the panel think that you need to have a policy in regard? Okay. Ice damage. This comes up and it is, people do have policies about this. John, why do I have this up here? I know it's not lightning round, but go ahead.
No, so for ice damage, there's so many factors that it depends on. So can you really create a rule or a policy? I mean, the policy should be what's already in your governing documents is that the board has the obligation to promptly repair. Basically, it's usually the sheetrock and insulation. And what that means. There's so many different factors. You don't want to use a policy or a rule to hamstring the board into doing something that they're not obligated to do.
My note said it would be a policy on who's typically responsible for the roof and what parts each party is responsible for.
Well, if it's a casualty loss, right? So you have to make an assumption that that's a sudden and unforeseeable or unexpected event, which triggers insurance. So you could potentially have an insurance claim. But if no one's at fault, your bylaws or your declaration, they already have clauses on who's got to do that.
Okay. Greg, I don't want to get sidetracked to the whole thing, but do we need to have a policy on ice damage?
I'll keep it quick. I would say no. You may have a insurance policy just generically stating what the unit owner should be purchasing and what the board is carrying. You don't want to be restating what's covered and not covered in your bylaws or the insurance policy itself. You may have a deductible resolution or other items, but as far as ice damming specifically, no.
Okay. Mike, do you agree?
Yes and no. So not to get a little spicy, but I think that there should be something talked about as far as from a procedural standpoint that you don't want to be firing out, 4 or 5 claims with one storm. You should properly assess the damage, prevent anything from happening forward. A lot of times we're seeing very high deductibles now, so you don't want to be putting claims in under the deductible or claims that are going to pay out only a couple $100 because that'll create a claims frequency issue.
I like the feistiness. I like it. Let me ask you though,
there's no feistiness, Greg and I.
I know, I'm joking. But really quick, if Dawn was here, your boss, who's on all the time, do you think Mike would have gone with that approach?
Yes.
You think? Okay. All right. Mike, would you?
I think he would. And I like it, but when he's talking about it's more
Okay.
generic insurance.
Okay.
And I agree with that part.
Excellent. All right. Architectural. Is this a policy, Stephanie, or is it just rules?
The policy is the application process and what you need in order to get that approval, right? The rules are the guidelines in which you can do and what you cannot do as far as that modification is concerned. So it needs both.
I love it. Does anybody want to add comment? That was perfect.
I'll add.
Oh, go ahead,
I think that was a perfect answer, and I'll say that the policy, sort of tagging on to what Stephanie said, the policy would be sort of whether a committee can say yes or no, or whether the manager can say yes or no, or what types of modifications have to go up the chain to the board. That's sort of how a policy maybe would apply with respect to architectural modification. Some are like rubber stamp at the front desk.
Right.
Some require votes, some require board intervention, that kind of thing. Certainly, if there's a modification that implicates fair housing, like religious decorations, that kind of thing, that would go to a different. The policy would deviate, would direct those to another course of analysis.
interesting how some of these you guys completely dive in on and other ones you don't. Garbage, Stephanie. Yes, no, maybe, do you need it, or
We have a
garbage
policy.
policy?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. 'Cause you don't want garbage out too early. You don't want garbage sitting there all day. You don't want people putting garbage out a week ahead of time. So
How is that not rules though, Stephanie? Is that a policy
part of
or
it is
rule?
rule, right? But then the policy part is we change it based on daylight savings here and different things. So we'll change what's going on. So the policy is driven on our side to make sure that we're communicating to the homeowners, like it's management's responsibility to make sure that we're communicating, oh, garbage goes back to 6 o'clock now because the clocks have changed. And then when the clocks change again for daylight savings, guess what? It's now 5 o'clock. You can put your garbage out because we don't want anybody getting hurt at night.
So
All right,
Stephanie, the policy kind of is carried out through the arrangement with the vendor contractor probably then, right? Like what times they come, how they can idle
yeah.
the trucks and that sort of thing, and right?
Yeah,
And
well,
I'm
we
gonna
also
run
have
out of,
that
and by
as
the way,
well, right? We have that
Yeah.
as well. Like they can't come in the community before 7 a.m.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so it's like the twofold thing. You're right, David.
Dave has no respect for my time frame. His answers are important and they're much appreciated, but absolutely none.
I'm
All right,
a
we're-
podcast guy, not a CNN
Okay.
talk show guy.
Okay. Email. Do you have to have a policy on emails on what people can and cannot put in email? Stephanie.
Yeah, good luck.
Okay. Anybody on the panel disagree with Stephanie that you don't need a policy on email? Whether or not people can record things at the meeting. Oh boy, this is going to be a big one. Okay. John, can we do this one quick? You need a policy.
Don't have to have a policy, just like in New York, it depends on your state. So New York is a one-party state, so really only one party has to know. My recommendation is, do you think anyone ever actually cares about listening to these meetings? Like,
Right.
So let them tape.
Corey, you need a policy on this?
It's statutory in Florida, but I'm still upset you didn't ask me my comments on ice damage.
I don't think you've seen ice, except if it's in your drink at the bar.
It was ice damming.
Yeah.
I know iced tea. Yeah.
You probably come up here like and you're like freezing when it's like 45 degrees. All right.
My toes get cold from the flip flops.
No ice. Stephanie, we only got 2 minutes. Policy or just rules?
Actually, we just do the township enforcement there. Township has a very restrictive thing as it relates to noise, and we tell them to call the township when there's a noise complaint.
Landscaping, Stephanie, that would panel jump in if you want to. Landscaping would be the same as architectural, right,
I
Stephanie?
believe so, yes, except when you're working with the contractor, right? But again, that's all covered in your contract.
I think people should think about having a policy in regard to drones. Stephanie, do you agree?
I do.
Okay. Do you have one?
No, we don't, because
You don't need one. Anybody on the panel?
Nobody's flying drones here.
I know. That's why I kind of backtracked.
Yeah.
Anybody on the panel disagree that you should consider having a policy on drones? This is going to be a thing. It's going to happen. Okay.
See, I mean, you want to adopt a rule on a drone, then like all these other things we've talked about over the years, and you better be prepared to enforce it. So if you adopt a rule that limits how people are going to fly drones, and better have somebody out there who's prepared to testify about who flew a drone and how low it was. And I mean, that's a very tough enforcement game to play, I think.
Oh, I think it's going to be a thing, Dave. But
yeah, and I'm sure it is very difficult to enforce. I don't know how you prove where the drone, follow the drone around the neighborhood, and
people are pretty dumb. They'll sit out there with their controller in front of everybody. All right. Maybe. Like Greg has a huge drone, like 6 feet, commercial drone, flies it all over Hudson Valley all the time. He knows what he's looking at. Okay. It pulls a banner, a Girelli insurance banner. All right. Rentals. You have to have a policy on that, I assume. Yes. Anybody disagree? Parking and towing. Yes. Stop me. Home occupancies. Do you have to have a policy on that? Stephanie.
It's already highlighted in the documents for a community of 55 plus.
Okay. So I didn't get the parties, accommodations, and documents we did. Parties is more around rules. Anybody disagree? Please stop me if you do disagree. Accommodations, does that need to be a policy? Anybody think it does?
What does that mean, accommodation?
I don't know. I don't know.
Reasonable
I'm out of time to go.
accommodations.
I think we talked about that with relation to animals and stuff like that, disability.
Elections. There's a lot of rules. Assume you have to have policies though, when people can and when they can't, what they can say, what they can't say. Stephanie, do you have a policy on elections?
We just simply follow the Radburn bill.
Oh, see there, for sure. I thought this would be a policy. Really, really quick. John, should you have a policy on elections?
Actually, I think you should because most
Okay.
New York bylaws are really skimpy.
Corey,
A lot of it's statutory in Florida, especially for condos.
oh, okay. Dave,
Yeah, this is another case by case, state by state thing. There are some states like New Jersey and Florida, based on what Corey said about Florida. I don't really know Florida, but New Jersey's got a pretty tight government mandated election related policy. It's sort of a fool's errand to try to create something different. But John's right about New York. It depends on your bylaws, and they're really bad, especially ones that are old.
I'm going to give Stephanie the last word. We're out of time. Does anybody have to say anything? If you really have to, by all means, please do. Please do. Dave, do you have to say anything? Are you sure? Okay, excellent. Dave's so nice to me. He's always makes time for me. Okay. Corey, John, you're good. Mike,
Good.
Greg,
The only
Stephanie.
thing I would add is with the committees, I would say that there should be some sort of discussion about what they can do from an event standpoint. You don't want people bringing, committee bringing their portable grills to the clubhouse to grill and have shared use amongst everybody. And I have had that happen in New Jersey. So that's the one pro tip regarding that.
All right. Stephanie, last word, if you could do it in 30 seconds about policies and procedures. What do you think?
When in doubt, contact your attorney.
That is such an out. Can you give me something else really quick?
No, I can't.
Okay.
That's
Well,
what
I
I
appreciate it.
I believe in that.
I know you do. I know you do. And you are an excellent manager. I want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you, panel, for letting me rush you. I appreciate that. And thank you, audience, for being here. And I'll try to get some of the other questions. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much. See you.
Hey, bye-bye.
Have a great day.